Hi, welcome back to Burbex, Brin's urban exploration. Today we are in search of a mystery. Yes, Beijing is a city of 1,000 mysteries, but the mystery that has fascinated me for more than 5 years now is where is Beijing's underground city? We're going in search of it today, and we're going to check out a whole bunch of places. Let's go. So you might be surprised to learn that every month I get dozens of emails from people looking for advice about urban exploration here in China, and most especially in Beijing. One of the foremost topics that they're curious about is the Beijing Underground City, which is something that I've been interested in for about 5 years now. Hidden entrances to the underground city were scattered all around the hutongs. They were underneath shops, they were in people's back rooms, and they were kept a very tightly held secret. These days, as demolition swept through the hutongs, it's very difficult to find these places. However, if you go out into the demolition grounds, you can actually find collapsed entrances into the tunnels. Actually, I'm looking right down into one right now. I've been doing urban exploration in about Beijing for 4 or 5 years now. As soon as my website went up, I started getting messages and comments about if I knew where Beijing Underground City was. I got kind of lucky to begin with. An associate professor from MIT, she came to visit Beijing, and together we were going around these hutongs trying to find entrances to the Beijing Underground City. You can see that we're actually going to pass another one right now. They're very, very well hidden. If you look just here, it says Ban Di Xia, which is a way of saying half underground. Right now, most of this neighborhood that we're in is actually on top of the Beijing Underground City, which in Chinese is called Beijing Disha城市. Beijing Underground City was built between 1969 and 1979 at the height of the tensions between Russia and China. And at that time, there was a border dispute about an island which lies between the two countries in the middle of the river. The Heilongjiang River, which in English is the Black Dragon River, divides Russia and China. It was feared by the Chinese government at the time that the dispute over the Zhenbao Island in the Heilongjiang River would spark nuclear war with the Soviets, who were considerably stronger than China at the time. For this reason, Chairman Mao Zedong, he started this massive project to build an underground city underneath central Beijing. Although the exact size of the Beijing Underground City is disputed, it's around 85 square kilometers, which is about 35 square miles. And it goes down about 18 to 18 meters deep, 26 to 59 feet. And that gives you an idea of how enormous this project was. The shelter was designed to hold up to 6 million people, the entire population of Beijing in the 1970s. It was designed to not only withstand regular attacks, but also nuclear attacks as well as biochemical attacks. Fortunately, by 1979, relations between Russia and China had improved a great deal and construction came to a halt, which basically meant that the underground city was left abandoned. We're coming up to a Super 8 hotel now, and it's reputed that there is actually an entrance to the underground city underneath this hotel. 我听说这个下边有那个北京地下城市，
在那边呢，是不是？不在这儿。他说那地下那个就那地下那个下去那个，在那个那条胡同。我先一回。
This is one of the other mysterious things about it, is that the local government does not want people to go down into there because they're afraid of terrorism within the city. Citizens who live in this area have been warned specifically not to tell anyone where entrances to the underground city are. So it's very, very difficult to find information about it. During the construction of the underground city, around 300,000 workers were put to work on building the underground city. Vast parts of the city were actually demolished and destroyed to make way for the city, and then everything was covered up again. As Sino-Soviet relations started to improve in the early 80s, the underground city was basically forgotten about, and people actually moved in there as a cheap place to stay. There were squatters in there, shops were opened underneath there. Originally, the underground city featured restaurants, clinics, roller skating rinks. There was also things going to be grown under there, and they were going to base a lot of the food production on fungiculture, or the production of mushrooms. Mushrooms are very popular in China, by the way. In the year 2000, actually parts of the underground city were opened again to the public as a tourist attraction. We're just coming up to one of the old entrances now. You can see that this is an old people's organization, but originally through this door here was actually the tourist entrance to the Beijing Underground City. Now, the reason I know about this is that about 4 or 5 years ago, I was contacted by an associate professor from MIT, and she came over to Beijing and she said that she actually had a map of all the entrances to the underground city in Beijing. And of course, I was really pleased to hear this, because this is something I'd been thinking about for a long time. So we're exploring. The big problem that we found is that because so many of these alleyways, these hutongs, are being renovated, a lot of things have been lost. Something that I found particularly interesting about this associate professor is that she actually collected AK-47s. So you can see urbex exploration brings out a lot of eccentricities in people. It's fairly obvious where many of these buildings have been renovated, and that's kind of wiped out a lot of Beijing history. But there are still a few older buildings which remain. Just along this hutong right now, there are a number of very old communist buildings, underneath which there are supposed to be entrances to the underground city. We're just coming up to another one here. A big issue in finding the underground city now is that because this area is Tianmen, which is just behind Tiananmen Square, security is really, really heavy here. You can see security guards every 20 meters on this road, and there are security cameras everywhere. If you're in Beijing and you're interested in visiting this area, you can find it on West Damocheng Street, and that actually means West Grinding Factory Street. I'm not sure what a grinding factory is. Is that like grinder? If you've watched a lot of my videos, then you'll know that I'm a big fan of these doorstops. A lot of these doorstops, they actually have hidden symbols in them. And if you can read a few of those symbols, it gives it a much richer meaning. If we look at these doorstops, you can see that they have a very highly stylized bat design. And you can see that in the bat's mouth it's holding a coin. And this comes from a pun in Chinese. In Chinese, there are lots of words which sound very similar. Bian Fu is bat, right? And so that's why it's got the bat. But in fact, if we change the sound a little bit to Bian Fu, that means become rich. So in China, if you see one of these bats with a coin in its mouth, it basically means, you know, that you're going to have wealth. We're just walking up one of the hutongs now towards Tianmen. Well, thank you. And what you can see is that everything kind of has this old style, this old feeling to it. But to be honest, all of this is fake. This is a fake hutong. All of this, maybe 10 or 20 years ago, was a completely different place. Technically speaking, these were considered to be slums. Now, usually when we think of slums, we might think of the Mumbai slums or the slums in Cape Town or Johannesburg, where there's a lot of very poor people. However, a lot of people actually misunderstand what the definition of a slum is. Usually we think of places with no indoor plumbing, no electricity, maybe there are contagious diseases that people can catch. We think about hygiene as well. Actually, another definition of a slum is that people do not have land rights. They have no rights to rent a place. They have no rights to own a place. And so even though tens of thousands of people were living in these hutongs, they were basically all living here illegally. And by that definition, they were slum dwellers. This definition doesn't go down well with the Beijing government, which sees hutongs as part of the city's heritage, as part of its history. And so they've gone through this massive renovation plan to basically demolish and then rebuild the hutongs exactly as they were, just with more modern amenities inside. And that's why you have all these fake alleyways everywhere. That's one of the contradictions of Beijing, is that tourists will often come here because they want to see what ancient Beijing looked like, but basically everything you see around you is a fraud. Everything's been rebuilt in the last 10 years. We're just coming up to another hotel now, and again, underneath this hotel there is supposed to be an entrance to the underground city. But I bet you pennies to pounds, they're not going to admit there's anything down there. Let's go and ask. 我听说这个下边有那个北京地下城市，是对了吗？
没有，
没有吗？
没有，这边没有。
我听说了，20年之前，这个大酒店下边有一个镜头。
你不清楚？
没有，你都，他知道吗？
没有，
真的没有。
上次都有人找，现在都没有。
OK，谢谢哈。I think the point is actually these ladies don't know, but there are extensive tunnels underneath these streets. In the absence of discernible facts about the underground city, there are actually a lot of rumors about the place. One rumor says that actually a lot of top secret information is still held by the government in the underground city, and that is very difficult to access. And if you get caught down there, you'll be convicted as a terrorist. So probably best not for me to go down there. Other rumors suggest that the underground city actually connects to the mountains in west of Beijing, and people could have escaped through these tunnels to the west of Beijing, and they would have been safe there. Here you can see this old looking facade of a building. But the thing about this is, while the facade is original, the inside has been completely demolished and then been rebuilt. So everything is just kind of a lie. Everything you see in Beijing is just a facade. There's no depth to it. My favorite rumor about the underground city is regarding Chairman Mao's mausoleum. When Chairman Mao died in 1976, he was preserved and laid to rest in his personal mausoleum in Tiananmen Square. These days, people line up for half an hour to go and see his body and pay respects to the old leader. The rumor says that Chairman Mao's real body is only on display 3 days a week, and the other 4 days of the week, it's actually a wax dummy. Apparently, there are tunnels which run underneath Chairman Mao's mausoleum, which are connected to the underground city, and that's how they make the exchange without anybody being any the wiser. You can see that this building behind me has been extensively renovated. When I first came back to Beijing, this was actually an abandoned building, and it had been a flop house for more than half a century, more than 50 years. Prostitutes and vagabonds would have hung out of this place. You can see now it's quite fancy. If you want to check out what it looked like before, you can check it out on my website. Well, I've hit Tiananmen now, and this is one of the most touristy places actually in Beijing, so I'm really not interested in this at all. If you like this video, hit like, and don't forget to hit subscribe for great new videos from Burbex, Brin's urban exploration every week. I'm off to buy some new underwear now. Where's H&M? Let's go.